Lauren didn't even try to hide the irritation on her face as she shoved my fine china into cardboard boxes. Every time I asked where my late husband's dishes were going, she answered with another impatient sigh or simply rolled her eyes. My son Daniel stood nearby, pretending not to notice, avoiding my gaze. Then Lauren reached for the small wooden box Miguel had always kept locked beside our dining cabinet. Before her fingers could lift the lid, a firm voice echoed from my front porch. "Mrs. Abigail Hernandez." The entire room fell silent. If you've ever wondered whether the people closest to you truly had your best interests at heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you have stopped the packing right then or trusted your family a little longer? Share your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional family dramas filled with suspense, unexpected twists, and hard-earned justice, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support truly means more than you know. The morning Miguel was buried, everyone kept telling me the same thing. Take all the time you need. I believed them. What I didn't realize was that all the time only lasted until the casseroles stopped arriving, the sympathy cards stopped filling my mailbox, and everyone else returned to their lives. Mine never did. 43 years. That was how long Miguel Hernandez and I had been married. We met when I was 22, teaching second grade at a small elementary school outside Columbus, Ohio. Miguel was a young civil engineer who had come to inspect the foundation of a new school building. He was quiet, almost painfully shy, but whenever he smiled, the whole room seemed warmer. He asked me to dinner 3 weeks later. We never spent another Christmas apart. Together, we built a life that wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. Our little brick house sat at the end of a peaceful cul-de-sac lined with maple trees. Miguel planted every flower bed himself. Every spring, he would kneel in the dirt wearing the same faded baseball cap while I teased him that tomatoes had no business growing next to roses. He always answered the same way. "They keep each other company." That was Miguel. He believed everything deserved companionship, even plants, especially people. After he retired, we settled into routines that became the rhythm of our lives. Coffee on the back porch every morning, grocery shopping every Tuesday, church on Sundays, Friday movie nights where we'd inevitably fall asleep halfway through whatever Western he'd chosen. I never imagined one ordinary Tuesday would become the day everything ended. The heart attack was sudden. So sudden that I never had the chance to say goodbye. Some days I still reached across the bed expecting to feel his hand. Instead, I found cold sheets. Grief doesn't announce itself. It hides in ordinary moments. In the empty chair across the breakfast table. In hearing the garage door that never opens. In setting 2 plates on the table before remembering only one is needed. People think mourning happens at funerals. They're wrong. It happens every single morning afterward. For 6 months, I tried to convince myself I was managing. The house was too quiet, but it still held Miguel's laughter. His reading glasses remained on the end table beside his recliner. His favorite coffee mug sat exactly where he'd left it. The wind chimes he'd hung outside our bedroom still played every evening. Keeping everything the same somehow made me feel he hadn't gone very far. Daniel visited once or twice each month. He always arrived carrying grocery bags I hadn't asked for. "Mom," he'd say while stocking my pantry, "you shouldn't be lifting heavy things." I appreciated the help. He was my only child. I'd raised him to be thoughtful, or at least I believed I had. Lauren usually stayed in the car. If she came inside, she spent more time checking emails than talking to me. She wasn't openly rude, just impatient. Everything seemed to inconvenience her. The silence, the old furniture, my stories about Miguel. Even the photographs covering our living room walls. One afternoon, she glanced around my dining room and forced a polite smile. "You really have a lot of things." I laughed softly. "When you've lived somewhere for 43 years, that tends to happen." She didn't laugh back. Instead, she said something that stayed with me. "It must be exhausting taking care of all this." At the time, I thought she was expressing concern. Now I know she was measuring. Weeks passed. Daniel's visits became more frequent. He started bringing brochures from retirement communities. Independent living, senior apartments, maintenance-free neighborhoods. They're beautiful places, Mom. I know. You'd have friends. I already have friends. You wouldn't have to mow the lawn. I hire someone. You'd be safer. That word, safer. It appeared in nearly every conversation. You'd be safer. You'd have people around. The house is just too much. At first, I gently refused. I appreciate the thought. I'm happy here. This is my home. Daniel nodded every time, yet somehow the conversations never stopped. Lauren became increasingly involved. One Saturday, she walked through my house carrying a notebook. She measured rooms, opened closets, counted cabinets. I frowned. "What are you doing?" She smiled without looking up. "Just trying to help." "Help with what?" "If you eventually decide to move, it's better to prepare early." Eventually. That word comforted me. It suggested choice. Looking back, I realized there was never supposed to be one. About a month later, Daniel invited me to lunch. We ate at my favorite little diner downtown. Halfway through dessert, he folded his hands together. "We've been thinking," I smiled. "That sounds dangerous." He laughed politely, not genuinely. "We really think it's time." "Time for what?" "To downsize." I stirred my coffee. "I'm not ready." "You don't have to decide today." "Then why are we talking about it today?" He hesitated. Lauren answered instead, because somehow she'd appeared beside our table after taking a phone call outside. "We're worried about you." "I appreciate that." "We're only trying to make your life easier." "My life is manageable." "It doesn't have to stay difficult." I looked from one face to the other. "When did taking care of my own home become difficult?" Neither answered immediately. Lauren finally leaned forward. "You don't need all this space anymore." I quietly replied, "Maybe not. But I still need my memories." For the first time, irritation flashed across her face, only for a second. Then it disappeared beneath another practiced smile. The subject changed, or so I thought. 3 mornings later, Daniel called. "Mom, don't make plans Friday." "Why?" "We're coming over." "All right." "We hired movers." I nearly dropped the phone. "You what?" "They're just giving estimates." "I never agreed to that." "It doesn't hurt to look. I don't want strangers in my house." "They'll only be there an hour." "Daniel, it's already scheduled." The line went quiet, not because we had finished talking, because he had. Friday arrived anyway. At exactly 9 o'clock, a moving truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men climbed out carrying clipboards. Lauren followed behind them like she was hosting an open house. She walked confidently through every room. "This bedroom." "The garage." "The dining room." She spoke as though she owned every wall surrounding us. I stood frozen in my own kitchen. No one had asked again. No one waited for permission. Even Daniel seemed uncomfortable. He kept saying things like, "It's only an estimate. They're professionals. This doesn't mean anything." Yet he never asked the movers to leave. By lunchtime, they were discussing packing schedules, storage options, moving dates. Lauren had already prepared folders, color-coded, labeled, organized. My stomach tightened. How long had she been planning this? That evening after everyone left, I wandered through my quiet house. The sunlight stretched across Miguel's favorite chair. The clock in the hallway ticked steadily. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet somehow, nothing felt like mine anymore. For the first time since Miguel died, I locked every door before going to bed. Not because I was afraid of strangers, because I had begun wondering whether I truly knew the people who still carried my last name. The following Monday, I woke before sunrise. For years, that had been Miguel's habit, not mine. He used to slip quietly out of bed at 5:30 every morning, careful not to wake me. By the time I came downstairs, the coffee would already be brewing, the newspaper folded beside my favorite chair, and soft jazz playing from the little radio on the kitchen counter. After he died, the mornings became unbearably silent. I started waking early simply because there was no one left to wake up beside me. That morning, I wrapped my hands around a warm mug of coffee and stood by the kitchen window overlooking the backyard. The vegetable garden Miguel had loved was beginning to overgrow with weeds. Every time I promised myself I'd clean it up, I somehow found another excuse. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe letting it grow wild was my way of pretending he might come back and complain about it. At 8:30 sharp, Daniel's SUV pulled into the driveway. I frowned. He hadn't mentioned visiting. Lauren climbed out first. She was dressed in expensive beige slacks, white sneakers that looked too clean to ever touch dirt, and a fitted navy blouse. She carried a clipboard in one hand and spoke into a wireless headset before she'd even reached the porch. Daniel followed behind her, carrying several empty cardboard boxes. The sight made my stomach tighten. I opened the front door before they could knock. "Good morning," I said cautiously. Lauren smiled brightly. "We thought we'd get an early start." "Start what?" She walked inside as though she lived there. "Packing." "I don't remember agreeing to pack today." "Oh, we're only doing a few things." Daniel avoided looking directly at me. "We figured we'd help a little at a time." "I said I wasn't ready." Lauren gently touched my arm. "Abigail, you're overwhelmed." "I'm standing in my own house making coffee." "Exactly." I blinked. "I'm sorry." You shouldn't have to worry about all this anymore. She motioned around the room. The dishes, the cabinets, the storage. It's too much. I slowly removed her hand from my arm. It isn't too much for me. For a brief moment, the smile disappeared from her face. Then it returned. We're only trying to make things easier. Without waiting for another response, she opened one of my kitchen cabinets. I watched in disbelief. She began removing plates. Not ordinary plates. Miguel's mother's china. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every anniversary dinner, those delicate ivory dishes had been on our table for more than 4 decades. Lauren wrapped one in packing paper, then another, then another. Please stop. She didn't. I said stop. This is safer. I didn't ask you to pack those. They'll break if we wait until moving day. There isn't a moving day. Lauren sighed. An exaggerated sigh. Then came the eye roll. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just enough to let me know she believed I was being unreasonable. That single expression hurt more than I expected. Not because she disagreed with me, because it carried something deeper. Dismissal. As though my opinions no longer mattered. As though I had become another elderly woman who couldn't make decisions for herself. Daniel shifted awkwardly beside the dining table. Mom. I looked at him. Tell her to stop. He rubbed the back of his neck. We're only trying to help. I don't need help deciding whether my own dishes stay in my own cabinet. Silence settled between us. Lauren continued wrapping plates. Paper crinkled, tape tore, boxes filled. Every sound felt like another piece of my home disappearing. I walked toward the dining room. The large oak cabinet Miguel built by hand stood against the wall. He'd spent nearly 6 months crafting it after retirement. Every shelf, every hinge, every carved detail. He used to joke that someday our grandchildren would fight over it. Instead, they were packing everything inside it. I gently opened the bottom drawer. Empty. Completely empty. I frowned. The silver serving tray Miguel received from his engineering firm was gone. Our crystal candle holders were gone. Even the embroidered table runner my mother had stitched before I married was missing. I looked toward Lauren. Where are they? She barely glanced up. What? The silver tray. Oh. It's probably already packed. I didn't see it. It must be in another box. What box? She shrugged. I don't know. Something about that answer bothered me. Lauren was the type of person who labeled everything. Color-coded everything. Organized everything. Yet suddenly she didn't know where priceless family heirlooms had gone. I walked into the living room. More boxes. Bookshelves partially empty. Picture frames stacked together. Decorative lamps unplugged. The room already looked unfamiliar. Daniel entered quietly behind me. Mom? I turned. Have you noticed things disappearing? He hesitated. What do you mean? The silver tray. The candle holders. The quilt. What quilt? The blue quilt your grandmother made. Oh, I'm sure it's somewhere. You don't know? It's probably packed. Again, probably. I had spent decades teaching children that details mattered. Now my own son couldn't tell me where family treasures had gone. By noon, the dining room looked almost bare. Lauren checked items off her clipboard with mechanical efficiency. Kitchen, completed. Dining room, completed. China, completed. Antiques, completed. The word completed echoed painfully in my mind. Completed, as though 43 years of memories could simply be checked off a list. The doorbell rang. Lauren frowned. I'll get it. Before she reached the front door, I stepped around her. I can answer my own door. Standing outside was Evelyn Brooks. She held a small basket of fresh blueberry muffins. Her gray curls peeked out beneath a gardening hat, and she smiled warmly when she saw me. I thought you might like these. Then her eyes drifted inside, to the boxes, to the packing paper, to Lauren directing movers. Her smile faded. Oh, I didn't realize today was moving day. It isn't. Evelyn looked confused. It isn't? No, Lauren interrupted quickly. We're just getting organized. Evelyn nodded politely, but I noticed her studying my face. She knew me too well. She could see something wasn't right. Abigail, she said carefully, may I speak with you outside for just a minute? I followed her onto the porch. The warm Ohio breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass. Evelyn lowered her voice. I wasn't sure whether to mention this. What is it? I've seen people here. What people? Oh, twice last week. I frowned. What do you mean? A black SUV. A couple. A man carrying a folder. They walked around your yard. They looked through your windows. They stayed about 20 minutes. Cold spread through my chest. I thought maybe you'd invited them. I haven't invited anyone. Evelyn looked back toward the house. The younger woman? Lauren. Yes. She was showing them around. My heart skipped. Showing them around. Evelyn nodded slowly. I assumed they were friends. They pointed at the garage, the backyard, the bedrooms. I even saw them measuring something near the porch. I stared at my own front door. No. There had to be another explanation, contractors, insurance, repairs, anything, because the alternative was too painful to consider. I thought you should know, Evelyn whispered. Before I could answer, Lauren opened the front door. There you are. Her voice was cheerful. We're almost finished for today. I looked past her. Boxes now lined my hallway, more than I remembered seeing that morning. Far more. And for the first time, I noticed something else. Not a single one had a label. No room, no contents, no destination, just plain brown boxes, waiting for somewhere. I stood in my front yard watching Evelyn walk back across the street, her basket now empty, but my heart far heavier than before she'd arrived. A black SUV. A couple looking through my windows, someone measuring my porch, Lauren giving them a tour. None of it made sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. I forced myself to stay calm. After 43 years of teaching elementary school, I'd learned that jumping to conclusions usually made things worse. Children often looked guilty before they were innocent, and innocent before they were guilty. Adults weren't much different. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. When I stepped back inside, Lauren was sealing another cardboard box with practiced efficiency. She smiled without looking up. Evelyn's sweet. She said she saw visitors here last week. Lauren paused for barely half a second before continuing to tape the box. Oh, a couple. They were walking around my property. I'm sure they were just lost. They were looking through my windows. Lauren laughed lightly. People are curious. I studied her face, not a flicker of surprise. Not a single question. Most people would have asked, really, or who were they? Lauren simply dismissed it. Daniel emerged from the hallway carrying another stack of folded blankets. What are you two talking about? Evelyn saw strangers at the house. He shrugged. It's probably nothing. I looked directly at him. You don't seem very concerned. He shifted the blankets in his arms. Should I be? I don't know. Should he? The conversation died there. Or rather, they made sure it did. By late afternoon, they finally left. The silence that settled over the house felt different now. Not peaceful, disturbed, almost violated. I slowly walked from room to room. The living room looked oddly hollow despite most of the furniture still being there. Empty shelves created strange blank spaces on the walls. Decorative pieces I'd seen every day for decades had vanished. The house no longer reflected the people who had built it. It looked as though someone was slowly erasing us. I stopped in front of the fireplace. Above the mantel hung my favorite family photograph. Miguel stood behind me with his hands resting gently on my shoulders. Daniel was 18 then, smiling proudly in his high school graduation gown. We looked so happy, so certain life would continue exactly as it always had. I reached up and straightened the frame. Behind it, something caught my attention. A thin layer of dust surrounded a clean rectangular outline. Another picture had once been hanging beside it. I frowned. Where was it? Then I remembered. Miguel's military portrait. It had disappeared. I searched the living room. Nothing. The hallway. Nothing. The guest bedroom. Nothing. I checked every closet. Still nothing. It wasn't simply packed away. It was gone. I sat down heavily in Miguel's recliner. For the first time since all this had started, I admitted something to myself. I was afraid. Not because of moving, not because of change, because I was beginning to doubt my own son. That realization hurt more than grief ever had. The following morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in months. I drove myself downtown, not to shop, not for groceries. I went to the county recorder's office. I wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe Evelyn's words still echoed in my mind. Maybe years of teaching had taught me that facts mattered more than assumptions. Either way, I wanted reassurance. The young woman at the information desk smiled politely. How may I help you? I'd like to verify ownership records for my home. Of course. She asked for my address. After typing for several moments, she turned the monitor slightly toward herself. Everything appears to be in order. I exhaled. Relief washed over me. Then she added, There haven't been any ownership transfers. Good. But my heart tightened again. There was a document filed several weeks ago. What kind of document? I'm sorry. I can't interpret legal filings. But there was recent activity connected to the property. Recent activity. I thanked her and walked outside. The summer air suddenly felt much warmer. A legal filing. What kind? Tax paperwork, insurance, refinancing. There were dozens of innocent possibilities. Still, Miguel had always shared every financial decision with me. Nothing involving our home had ever happened without both of us discussing it first. Now documents existed that I knew nothing about. When I returned home that afternoon, another surprise was waiting. Lauren's silver sedan sat in my driveway. She wasn't supposed to be there. I parked quietly behind her. As I walked toward the front porch, voices drifted through the partially open kitchen window. Lauren, a man. Neither realized I was outside. I just need another week, Lauren said. The man's voice remained calm. The buyers are asking questions. They'll wait. They won't wait forever. We're almost finished. Finished, but I moved closer without making a sound. The man continued. Once everything's cleared out, it'll photograph much better. My pulse quickened. Photograph Lauren lowered her voice. I know. We're working as fast as we can. I just need Daniel to stop feeling guilty. Every muscle in my body stiffened. Buyers, photographs, cleared out. None of those words belong together unless... The front door suddenly opened. Lauren stepped outside carrying her purse. She froze the moment she saw me standing near the walkway. Abigail. Her smile arrived too quickly. I didn't hear you. I just got home. Oh, what are you doing here? I forgot a few things. She stepped onto the porch, carefully positioning herself between me and the front door. I thought you were shopping. I was. Did you find everything? I found enough. She laughed nervously. I should get going. As she hurried toward her car, a man emerged from inside my house. He was in his mid-40s, neatly dressed, carrying a leather portfolio. He immediately stopped when he noticed me. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the homeowner had returned. The homeowner. An odd choice of words. Lauren quickly interrupted. Abigail, this is Tyler. He extended his hand. Tyler Morgan? Pleasure to meet you. What brings you here, Mr. Morgan? Lauren answered before he could. He's helping Daniel with some paperwork. What paperwork? She hesitated. Insurance. I looked at Tyler. He smiled politely. Yes, insurance. Something about the way he said it felt rehearsed. I had spent decades watching children invent excuses after broken classroom windows. Tyler's answer carried that same uncomfortable hesitation. Not a lie polished by experience, a lie created seconds earlier. He excused himself and walked quickly toward his SUV parked across the street. I watched him leave. Then I noticed something. The leather folder he'd been carrying wasn't fully closed. Several glossy photographs were visible inside. Large photographs, exterior photographs, of houses. My house, I couldn't be certain, but the possibility settled heavily inside me. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about Tyler Morgan. The name sounded familiar. Where had I heard it before I walked into my small home office and opened the filing cabinet where Miguel kept local business cards? He believed in saving everything: receipts, manuals, business directories, even thank you notes. Half an hour later, I found it. A business card. Tyler Morgan. Licensed real estate broker. I stared at the words. Real estate insurance. Lauren had lied. Again. Suddenly, my eyes drifted toward the kitchen counter. A small stack of magazines lay beside the fruit bowl. I had ignored them for weeks. Now one cover caught my attention. Preparing your home to sell. Sell. My hands trembled. I flipped through the pages absent-mindedly. Something slipped out and landed on the floor. A folded brochure, printed in full color. Across the top, in bold letters, it read, Coming soon. Below it was a familiar photograph. A brick home. White shutters. Blue front door. Maple trees lining the sidewalk. My house. No address had been printed yet. But I would have recognized that front porch anywhere. Someone had already prepared marketing materials before I'd agreed to leave. My knees weakened. I slowly lowered myself into a kitchen chair, staring at the brochure, while one terrible question echoed through my mind. If they were already preparing to sell my home? What else had they done without telling me? I sat at my kitchen table long after the sun had disappeared, the glossy brochure still lying in front of me. The photograph of my house looked almost too perfect. The flower beds had been brightened. The sky was a deeper blue than I had ever seen. Even the lawn looked greener. It was the kind of picture meant to convince strangers that they had found their dream home. To me, it felt like looking at an obituary. Someone had already begun saying goodbye to my house before I'd even decided to leave it. I turned the brochure over. There was no listing price, no address, only the words "Coming soon, a rare opportunity in Maple Creek Estates." Rare opportunity. I whispered the words to myself. Was that all 43 years of my marriage had become an opportunity? I folded the brochure carefully and slipped it into the drawer beside the refrigerator. For the first time in months, I didn't cry before bed. Instead, I lay awake thinking about Tyler Morgan, thinking about Lauren, thinking about Daniel. Most of all, thinking about Miguel. He had always told me something that I never fully appreciated until that night. When something doesn't make sense, Abby, don't argue with people. Watch what they do. At the time, he had been talking about dishonest contractors. Now his words carried an entirely different meaning. I decided I would stop asking questions. I would start paying attention. The next morning arrived unusually quiet. No phone calls, no unexpected visitors, no cardboard boxes. For several hours, I almost convinced myself I had imagined the entire situation. Then, at a little after 11, my phone rang. Daniel. "Morning, Mom." His voice sounded unusually cheerful. "Good morning. Lauren and I thought we'd stop by this afternoon." "What for?" "Just checking on you." I'm doing fine. We'll only stay a little while." He sounded rehearsed, as though someone had told him exactly what to say. "All right," I answered. "We'll be here around 2. He hung up before I could ask another question. Exactly at 2 o'clock, Daniel's SUV pulled into the driveway. Lauren climbed out, carrying coffee cups and a paper bag from my favorite bakery. If someone had driven past the house, they would have thought they were watching the perfect family visit, an elderly mother. Only I knew better now. Lauren hugged me lightly. "We brought cinnamon rolls." "Thank you." Daniel kissed my forehead. "How are you feeling today?" "I've had better weeks." "We're worried about you." There was that phrase again. Always worried, never listening. They followed me into the kitchen. Lauren immediately began wiping the countertops. Daniel wandered into the living room. Neither of them asked permission. Again, I quietly poured coffee into 3 mugs. As we sat around the table, I decided to try something different. No accusations, just observation. "I stopped by the county recorder's office yesterday." Daniel nearly dropped his coffee. Lauren froze for the briefest fraction of a second before forcing another smile. "Oh." I wanted to make sure everything regarding the house was still in order. Daniel cleared his throat. "And they said there had been recent paperwork filed." Silence. Lauren reached for her coffee. "I'm sure that's normal." "Is it?" She nodded. "Probably tax records." Daniel quickly agreed. "Exactly." Neither sounded convincing. I looked directly at my son. "Daniel." "Yes. Have you signed anything involving this house?" His eyes flickered toward Lauren, only for an instant, but I noticed. "No. Nothing important. Nothing important." That wasn't the same as nothing. I simply nodded. The conversation drifted toward Weather Church and Sophia's upcoming high school orientation. Lauren spoke enthusiastically about decorating Sophia's bedroom. Daniel laughed at stories from work. Anyone listening would have believed we were an ordinary family sharing coffee. Except beneath every sentence ran another conversation, one built entirely on things left unsaid. They left around 4. As Daniel backed the SUV out of the driveway, Lauren waved cheerfully through the passenger window. I waved back. Then I immediately drove across town, not to the grocery store, not to church. I went to Benjamin Carter's law office, or rather, I tried to. Miguel had used Benjamin for nearly 30 years, estate planning, property taxes, retirement paperwork. If anyone knew whether strange legal documents existed, surely it would be Benjamin. But when I reached the office building, the receptionist looked apologetic. "I'm sorry. Mr. Carter retired about 6 months ago." My heart sank. "Retired?" "Yes." "Do you know how I could reach him?" "I'm afraid we can't give out personal information." I thanked her anyway. As I turned to leave, an older man sitting in the waiting room looked up from his newspaper. "Did you say Benjamin Carter?" "I did." "He isn't fully retired." I stopped. "What do you mean?" "He still handles a few longtime clients privately." "You know him." The man smiled. "We've been fishing together for 20 years. Hope flickered inside me. "Would you happen to know how I could reach him?" "I'm sorry. I don't have his number. But I do know one thing." "What?" "If Benjamin promised someone he'd take care of something," the man folded his newspaper. "He always did." Those words stayed with me all the way home. Friday morning arrived with steady rain. I spent the morning sorting old family photographs. There were hundreds: birthday parties, camping trips, Christmas mornings, Daniel learning to ride a bicycle, Sophia as a toddler sitting on Miguel's shoulders. One photograph made me stop. Miguel stood beside our dining room cabinet, the same cabinet Lauren had nearly emptied. He was smiling proudly, holding a tiny wooden box, the keepsake box. I turned the photograph over. Miguel had written in neat handwriting, "For Abby, some things are worth protecting." I stared at those words, worth protecting. Why would he write that? The keepsake box suddenly seemed far more important than I'd realized. I hurried into the dining room. The cabinet still stood against the wall. The wooden box remained inside. Thank goodness. I carefully lifted it into my lap. It felt surprisingly heavy. The brass lock remained closed. Miguel had never hidden the key, at least, not that I remembered. I searched every drawer in the cabinet. Nothing. The kitchen? Nothing. His desk? Nothing. After nearly an hour, I gave up. Whatever was inside would have to wait. Saturday afternoon, I heard another knock at the door. This time it wasn't Daniel, nor Lauren. Standing on my porch was Evelyn. She looked unusually serious. "I thought you should know something." "What happened?" I saw that real estate man again, Tyler. He was parked 2 streets over. This morning. He wasn't alone. My pulse quickened. Who was with him? A younger couple. They got out. They looked at your backyard from the sidewalk. I closed my eyes briefly. It was happening again. Evelyn lowered her voice. I wrote down his license plate. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I looked at it in surprise. "You did that?" She smiled faintly. "I spent 38 years as a nurse." "You learned to notice details." Emotion caught in my throat. For the first time since Miguel died, I felt as though someone truly believed me. Not pitied me, believed me. As Evelyn prepared to leave, another vehicle slowly turned onto my street, a dark blue sedan. It pulled directly into my driveway. Neither Evelyn nor I recognized it. The driver's door opened. An older gentleman in a charcoal suit stepped out, carrying a weathered leather briefcase. He looked toward my front porch, then toward the house as though confirming the address. Finally, his eyes met mine. His expression softened with unmistakable relief. He climbed the porch steps with measured confidence. "Mrs. Abigail Hernandez." "Yes," he extended his hand. "My name is Benjamin Carter." For a heartbeat, I couldn't speak. "I've been trying to find you for weeks." He glanced past me into the house, noticing the stacked boxes visible through the hallway. The warmth disappeared from his face. Instead, his expression turned grave. "I'm afraid I've arrived just in time." My heart began pounding. Benjamin looked directly into my eyes and asked the question that changed everything. "Mrs. Hernandez, why is your family packing this house before your husband's final instructions have been carried out?" For several seconds, I simply stared at Benjamin Carter. Rainwater dripped steadily from the brim of his charcoal fedora onto my front porch, but he didn't seem to notice. Neither did I. His question echoed inside my mind. "Why is your family packing this house before your husband's final instructions have been carried out?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. Finally, I managed to whisper, "I don't understand." Benjamin studied my face carefully. His expression changed from concern to something much heavier, realization. "You truly don't know." It wasn't a question. It was a conclusion. I slowly shook my head. "No." He glanced toward Evelyn, who remained quietly standing a few feet away. "Mrs. Brooks, would you mind giving us a few minutes?" Evelyn looked at me. Only after I nodded did she squeeze my arm gently. "If you need anything," she whispered, "I'm right across the street." "I know." She walked away without another word. Benjamin waited until she reached her porch before speaking again. "May I come inside?" "Of course." As soon as he stepped into the hallway, his eyes fell upon the dozens of unlabeled cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. He frowned. "They've already packed this much." "Yes. When did they begin?" "A few days ago. And you authorized it." The answer caught painfully in my throat. "I never really said yes." Benjamin closed his eyes briefly, almost as if he had feared hearing exactly that. He placed his leather briefcase carefully on my dining room table, the same table where Miguel and I had celebrated 43 anniversaries. "I wish I had found you sooner." "So do I admitted. He removed his jacket, folded it neatly over the back of a chair, then opened the worn leather briefcase. Inside were several thick folders secured with blue ribbons. Every folder bore the same name, Miguel Hernandez. The sight of my husband's handwriting immediately brought tears to my eyes. Benjamin noticed. He prepared all of this personally. When? About 3 years before he passed away. 3 years. Miguel had never mentioned any of it. Benjamin gently untied one of the ribbons. Mrs. Hernandez? Before we discuss the documents, I need to ask you several questions. I nodded. Has anyone asked you to sign paperwork recently? I thought carefully. There have been papers, but I never signed anything important. Did anyone ever place several documents in front of you at once? I remembered immediately. After Miguel's funeral, Benjamin looked up. Tell me. Daniel had visited about 2 weeks afterward. He'd arrived carrying lunch in several envelopes. He told me they were routine paperwork, insurance forms, utility transfers, a few banking updates. I hadn't read every page. My eyes were swollen from crying. My mind barely functioned. I simply trusted my son. I signed where Daniel placed little yellow tabs. Benjamin's jaw tightened. Did Lauren participate? She explained which pages needed signatures. Did either of them leave you copies? I searched my memory. No. They said they'd file everything. Benjamin slowly removed his glasses. His expression had become noticeably more serious. I was afraid of that. My heartbeat quickened. What happened? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. He reached into another folder. This. He slid a cream-colored document across the table. Is the last amendment Miguel made to his estate plan. I looked at the first page. The date. Miguel's signature. Benjamin's notarization. Everything looked official. I don't understand legal language. You won't need to. Benjamin smiled gently. I'll explain everything. He pointed toward one paragraph. First, your husband never intended for you to leave this home unless you personally chose to. I blinked. He said that he wrote it very clearly. Benjamin turned another page. He believed familiar surroundings would help you after his passing. My throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Miguel. Benjamin continued. Second, the house was placed into a protected family trust. A trust, yes. What does that mean? It means ownership and management follow very specific legal instructions. I frowned. I thought everything automatically became mine. Benjamin nodded. Practically speaking, it did. But Miguel wanted additional protection. Protection from what? He hesitated. From pressure. I stared at him. Pressure. He worried someone might convince you to make decisions while grieving. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Miguel had anticipated this. Benjamin continued quietly. He told me something during our final meeting. What? Abby has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Tears filled my eyes. Benjamin smiled sadly. Then he said, That's exactly what worries me. I lowered my head. That was Miguel, always protecting me, even from things I couldn't yet imagine. Benjamin opened another folder. According to the trust, he pointed to another section. No sale, transfer, refinancing, or listing of this property can legally occur without your direct written approval. I never approved any sale. I believe you, he continued reading. Furthermore, he paused deliberately. Any attempt to pressure or manipulate you into surrendering the property may violate the trust's protective provisions. I looked at him in confusion. What happens if someone does? Benjamin folded his hands. The trust gives me authority to intervene. Miguel appointed me as independent trustee. I stared. I had no idea. He instructed me not to become involved unless I believed someone was attempting to interfere with your free decisions. My mind raced. Then why are you here now? Benjamin looked toward the stacked boxes. I've spent nearly 3 weeks trying to contact you. 3 weeks. I called. No answer. I mailed letters. I never received them. I visited twice. No one answered. My stomach dropped. Lauren, Daniel, someone had intercepted them. Benjamin seemed to reach the same conclusion. I suspected someone wasn't allowing us to communicate. He pulled another envelope from the briefcase. This was returned unopened. The envelope was addressed to me, in Benjamin's handwriting. Across the front, someone had written, "No longer residing at this address." I stared in disbelief. I never moved. I know. Who wrote that? I don't know. But someone clearly wanted me to believe you were already gone. Anger slowly replaced my confusion. Not loud anger, quiet anger, the kind that settles deeply inside the soul. Benjamin continued. I hired a private investigator 2 weeks ago. You did? I became concerned. What did he find? Benjamin hesitated. I'd rather verify everything before discussing it. Please. I need the truth, he sighed. Very well. The investigator confirmed your house has been shown privately to at least 3 prospective buyers. The room spun. So Evelyn was right. Benjamin nodded. He also confirmed someone requested preliminary market evaluations. Who? I believe Lauren Hernandez. My heart broke. Even after everything, hearing my daughter-in-law's full name spoken in that context felt surreal. Benjamin reached into the final folder. There is one more matter. He carefully withdrew a small sealed envelope. Unlike the legal papers, this one was handwritten. Across the front in Miguel's familiar script were only 5 words. For Abby, when she's ready. I reached for it instinctively. Benjamin gently placed his hand over mine. Not yet. I looked at him. Miguel left very specific instructions. What instructions? This letter can only be opened after one condition has been met. What condition? Benjamin looked directly into my eyes. You must first reclaim complete control over your own life. A tear slipped down my cheek. Even now, even after death, Miguel was still trying to remind me who I had always been. Benjamin carefully returned the letter to its protective envelope. I promise you something, Mrs. Hernandez. As long as I remain alive, I will carry out every one of your husband's wishes exactly as he intended. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Miguel's funeral. Not happiness, not relief, hope, real hope. But it lasted only a moment, because just then tires crunched against the gravel outside. Benjamin walked toward the front window. He parted the curtain slightly. A dark gray SUV had just pulled into my driveway. Daniel stepped out first. Lauren climbed out beside him. Benjamin quietly let the curtain fall. Without taking his eyes off the front door, he said in a calm, steady voice, I think it's time your family learned that Miguel planned much further ahead than they ever imagined. The front door opened before either of us had a chance to say another word. Mom. Daniel's voice carried through the hallway with its usual familiarity, but this time it sounded uncertain. We're here. Lauren followed him inside, carrying 2 reusable grocery bags. She stopped so abruptly that one bag slipped from her hand, sending a carton of eggs rolling across the hardwood floor. Benjamin Carter was standing in the middle of my dining room. For a long moment no one spoke. Lauren recovered first. Her smile appeared almost instantly. Oh, Mr. Carter. Benjamin nodded politely. Mrs. Hernandez. Interesting, I thought. He addressed her by her married name, not by her first name, not warmly, not like old acquaintances, simply professionally. Daniel looked from Benjamin to me. I didn't know you were having company. Benjamin answered before I could. We've been discussing your father's estate. I watched Daniel carefully. The color drained from his face, only slightly, but enough for me to notice. Lauren set the grocery bag on the kitchen counter. I thought everything regarding Miguel's estate was finished months ago. Benjamin folded his hands calmly. That's a common misunderstanding. Lauren laughed softly. Is it? It is. The room became strangely quiet. Benjamin never raised his voice. He didn't accuse anyone, yet somehow he controlled the entire conversation simply by remaining calm. Daniel finally spoke. So, what brings you here? Benjamin looked directly at him. Your father. Daniel frowned. My father passed away. Yes, but his legal instructions did not. Silence settled over the room. I had known Benjamin for less than an hour, yet I already understood something about him. He never wasted words. Every sentence served a purpose. Lauren crossed her arms. I don't understand. Benjamin smiled politely. I'm sure we'll clear everything up. She didn't smile back. We moved into the living room. No one suggested sitting at the dining table. Perhaps none of us wanted to. That table suddenly felt like a courtroom waiting for testimony. Benjamin remained standing. So that everyone understands the situation equally, he began, I'd like to review several facts. Lauren interrupted immediately. I'm not sure that's necessary. It is. His tone remained perfectly even. Daniel rubbed his palms together nervously. What exactly are we talking about? Benjamin opened a thin leather folder. Mr. Hernandez. Daniel looked up. Your father established a protected trust 3 years before his death. I know about the trust. Benjamin tilted his head slightly. Do you? Daniel hesitated. I knew there was paperwork. Benjamin nodded. Did you know your mother is the sole decision-maker regarding the residence? Daniel looked confused. I thought... He stopped speaking. Benjamin waited. I thought all of us would eventually decide together. I'm afraid that's incorrect. Lauren stepped forward. Daniel has every right to help his mother. Benjamin smiled. Helping and deciding are not the same thing. Lauren's jaw tightened. We've only been trying to make her life easier. Benjamin turned toward me. Mrs. Hernandez. Yes. Have you instructed anyone to prepare this home for sale? No. Have you instructed anyone to meet with real estate professionals? No. Have you authorized anyone to market this property? No. Each answer sounded louder than the previous one. Benjamin looked back at Daniel. You heard your mother's answers. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, Benjamin continued. Then perhaps you can explain why this property has already been shown privately. Daniel stared blankly. What? Lauren spoke before he could. I don't know what you're talking about. Benjamin reached into his folder. He removed several photographs. Not glossy marketing photos, surveillance photographs. Each carried a printed date, time, location. He laid them carefully across the coffee table. One showed Tyler Morgan speaking with Lauren in my front yard. Another showed an unfamiliar couple walking through my backyard. A third showed Tyler measuring my front porch while Lauren unlocked the front door. Daniel leaned forward. What is this? Benjamin answered quietly. Documentation. Lauren's face remained remarkably composed. Those are contractors. No? Benjamin calmly slid another document across the table. Tyler Morgan's business license. Licensed real estate broker? Daniel picked it up. His eyebrows slowly rose. You told me he handled insurance. Lauren looked directly at him. He does referrals. Benjamin gently shook his head. No. He specializes almost exclusively in residential property sales. No one spoke. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, Daniel turned toward his wife. You told me. I know what I told you. So why? Lauren exhaled sharply. Because you overreact to everything. I watched my son. Confusion had replaced certainty. For the first time, I saw genuine doubt in his eyes. Benjamin wasn't finished. There is another matter. He opened a second folder. This concerns financial obligations. Lauren immediately stiffened. I don't see how our finances are anyone else's business. They become relevant when they motivate unauthorized attempts to dispose of trust property. Daniel looked bewildered. What does that mean? Benjamin chose his words carefully. It means financial pressure often influences poor decisions. Lauren folded her arms. We're doing just fine. Benjamin slid another paper onto the coffee table. Daniel picked it up. What is this? A public filing. Daniel frowned. My home equity loan. My head turned sharply toward him. Home equity loan. Benjamin nodded. Filed 14 months ago. Daniel looked embarrassed. I was going to tell you, Mom. When? He couldn't answer. Benjamin continued. There are also 2 business loans. Daniel looked at Lauren. I thought those were almost paid off. Lauren didn't respond. There is additionally, Benjamin turned another page, approximately $187,000 in unsecured personal debt. Daniel stared. What? His voice cracked. What are you talking about? Benjamin quietly pushed another document toward him. Daniel read it once, twice, then a third time. His hands began trembling. Lauren? She looked away. You said I was handling it. You told me we owed less than $40,000. I was trying to protect you. Daniel slowly stood. No, you lied. Lauren's composure finally cracked. I did what I had to do. Benjamin remained silent. He understood this wasn't his moment. It belonged to the family. Daniel looked utterly lost. How long? Lauren rubbed her forehead. A while. A while. Almost 3 years. 3 years. Almost exactly when Miguel had created the trust. A chill ran through me. Had he somehow known, or had he simply understood people well enough to prepare for possibilities? Daniel looked at his wife as though seeing her for the first time. You wanted to sell Mom's house. Lauren answered immediately. I wanted to save our family. By taking hers, no. By helping everyone. Benjamin spoke quietly. The trust records indicate Mrs. Hernandez repeatedly declined discussions about selling. Lauren glared at him. People change their minds. Benjamin met her gaze calmly. Only when they're allowed to make them. Daniel sank back into his chair. He looked exhausted, older somehow. I honestly thought... He swallowed hard. I believed we were helping Mom. I finally spoke. Did you... He looked at me. I did. Then why didn't you tell me about Tyler? He lowered his head. Lauren said she only wanted an opinion. Why didn't you tell me buyers were visiting? I didn't know. You didn't ask. He didn't answer. That silence hurt almost as much as any lie, because it reminded me of something Miguel once told Daniel when he was a teenager. If you refuse to ask questions because you're afraid of the answers, you're choosing ignorance. Back then, Daniel had laughed. Now those words carried a different weight. Benjamin carefully gathered several documents back into his folder. There remains one final issue. Lauren sighed dramatically. What now? Benjamin looked directly at her. The trust permits me to investigate any attempt to influence Mrs. Hernandez improperly. Lauren rolled her eyes. There it is again. Influence. She's an adult, Benjamin nodded. She is. Which is precisely why no one else should be making decisions for her. Then he reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope. Not Miguel's personal letter. Another one. Across the front was written notice of immediate suspension. Benjamin placed it gently on the coffee table. What is that bait? Daniel asked. Benjamin looked first at him, then at Lauren. My formal notice. Effective immediately. All discussions, negotiations, preparations, marketing activities, and third-party communications concerning Mrs. Abigail Hernandez's residence are legally suspended pending a full review. Lauren's face turned pale. Benjamin closed his briefcase. And I have a strong feeling, he looked directly at Lauren, this review is going to uncover far more than any of us expected. No one moved after Benjamin finished speaking. The sealed notice remained on the coffee table like a line drawn through the middle of our family. On one side sat my son, his shoulders slumped, staring blankly at the financial documents spread before him. On the other sat Lauren, her jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles twitch beneath her skin. Benjamin calmly closed his briefcase. I'll leave copies of everything with Mrs. Hernandez. Lauren finally broke the silence. You can't seriously believe we've committed some kind of crime. Benjamin looked at her with the same steady expression he had worn all afternoon. I haven't accused anyone of a crime. Then what are you accusing us of? I'm questioning decisions. That's not the same thing. She crossed her arms. You've made us look like villains. Benjamin replied without raising his voice. No, the documents did that. Lauren's face flushed. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no clever response. Benjamin turned toward me. I'll contact you tomorrow morning. I'd also like you to avoid signing anything. I won't. If anyone asks you to review paperwork, call me first. I promise. He handed me a business card with 2 phone numbers written neatly on the back. This is my personal number, and this, my home. You may call either. I smiled faintly. Thank you. He paused before leaving. Then he looked directly at Daniel. Your father loved you very much. Daniel lowered his eyes. I know. Benjamin nodded sadly. I hope for your sake you remember that over the next few days. Without another word, he walked towards the front door. The moment it closed behind him, the atmosphere inside the house changed completely. No one pretended anymore. Daniel remained seated, staring at the papers. Lauren stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She began gathering the documents from the coffee table. Daniel reached out instinctively. Leave them. They're ours. No, they belong to Mom. Lauren stopped. What did you say? I said leave them. She looked genuinely shocked. It was the first time I had ever seen Daniel openly disagree with her. Her voice became colder. We'll discuss this at home. We're discussing it now. She laughed once, a short, humorless laugh. So now you're listening to some lawyer you've barely seen in years instead of your own wife. I'm listening to evidence. Her eyes narrowed. I've spent years trying to keep this family together. Daniel slowly looked up. Have you? The question hung heavily between them. I quietly stood. This isn't the place. Neither heard me. Lauren pointed toward the stack of financial statements. Those numbers don't tell the whole story. Then tell me. Daniel's voice was calm. Right now, she hesitated. It's complicated. Try me. Another silence. Finally, she spoke. My real estate business collapsed after the market slowed. I know. Not completely. What does that mean? I borrowed money. How much? She didn't answer immediately. Daniel repeated himself. How much? Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. More than I expected. He picked up the statement again. $187,000. She closed her eyes. Almost. Daniel looked as though someone had struck him. I thought we were struggling. We were. No. I thought we were temporarily behind. Lauren's shoulders sagged. I kept believing I could fix it. Without telling me, I didn't want you to worry. Daniel stood. I've spent 3 years living inside a lie. I watched quietly from across the room. Part of me wanted to comfort my son. Another part remembered every box Lauren had packed, every eye roll, every dismissal. Every moment she had treated me like an obstacle instead of a mother. I remained silent. They left separately. Lauren drove away first. Daniel stayed behind. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked at me. "I'm sorry." The words came out quietly, almost timidly. I wanted desperately to believe them. Instead, I asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I've heard 'I'm sorry' before. I need to know what you think happened." He rubbed both hands across his face. "I honestly believed moving you was the best decision." "I know, but somewhere," his voice broke, "I stopped asking whether it was your decision." That answer hurt because it was honest. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I suppose you did." He looked around the room, at the boxes, at the half-empty shelves, at Miguel's photographs. I didn't realize how much had already disappeared. Neither had I, not until it was almost gone. The following morning, I began doing something I hadn't done since Miguel passed away. I unpacked, one box at a time. If someone had packed my dishes without permission, I could certainly place them back where they belonged. The first box contained ordinary plates. The second held serving bowls. The third... I froze. The blue quilt my mother had sewn 50 years earlier, carelessly folded beneath heavy cookware. My heart sank. I carefully lifted it free. The delicate stitching had snagged in several places. Tiny threads hung loose where cast iron pans had crushed the fabric. I gently spread it across the dining table. "I'll fix you," I whispered. As I continued unpacking, more surprises appeared. Family photo albums mixed with bathroom towels. Miguel's medals wrapped inside newspaper beside coffee mugs. Christmas ornaments stuffed between gardening tools. Nothing had been organized. Nothing had been protected. Whoever packed these boxes hadn't simply been careless. They'd been rushing. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Benjamin." "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hernandez." "Hello? How are you holding up?" "I've started unpacking." There was a brief pause. "I'm glad. I've also learned something." "What?" "These boxes weren't packed by professionals." "What makes you say that?" I described the damaged quilt, the medals, the broken picture frame I'd just discovered. Benjamin sighed. "I suspected as much." "What else did you find?" "My husband's military portrait is still missing." "I'll make a note of that." Then his voice became more serious. "My investigator located a storage unit rented under Lauren Hernandez's name." My hand stopped moving. "A storage unit?" "Yes. It was rented approximately 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks? Before the packing officially began. I sat down slowly. What would she need a storage unit for? I don't know yet. But we received permission to inspect it this afternoon. My pulse quickened. "Will you tell me what you find?" "Immediately." The rest of the afternoon passed painfully slowly. I couldn't concentrate on unpacking. Every few minutes, I found myself staring out the front window. Around 5 o'clock, Benjamin called again. His voice sounded different this time, graver. "We've completed the inspection." "What was inside?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Mrs. Hernandez, has anyone ever discussed selling your personal belongings online?" "No, not once." "I was afraid you'd say that." My heart pounded. "What did you find? Antique furniture? My husband's woodworking tools? Several unopened boxes." "What boxes?" "Boxes labeled with your family name." Tears filled my eyes. "My things." "Yes," he continued quietly. "We also found handwritten price tags attached to numerous heirlooms." Price tags, not inventory labels. Prices, as though decades of family history had already become merchandise. Benjamin wasn't finished. There was something else. "What?" "A small bicycle." I frowned. "A bicycle? It belonged to Sophia." I recognized her name written underneath the seat. Confused, I asked, "Why would Sophia's bicycle be there?" "I don't know. But it suggests someone intended to store far more than just your belongings." Before I could respond, another voice sounded faintly through Benjamin's phone. A young girl's voice, crying. Then one sentence reached me clearly. "Dad, I found Grandma's picture in Mom's storage boxes." Sophia, my granddaughter. Benjamin covered the phone briefly, then returned. His voice was almost a whisper. I think we're about to learn something your granddaughter was never supposed to see." For several seconds I couldn't speak. The only sound coming through the phone was Sophia quietly crying in the background. Benjamin lowered his voice. "Mrs. Hernandez, I need to end this call." "Is Sophia all right?" "I believe so. But she's extremely upset. What happened?" "I'll explain everything once I understand it myself." The call ended. I remained standing in my kitchen, my phone still in my hand. Sophia had found one of my photographs inside Lauren's storage unit. Not in my house, not in a moving box. In a rented storage unit. That single fact changed everything. Until then, I had tried to believe Lauren was making terrible decisions under financial pressure. Now I had to consider something much darker. Someone had been quietly removing pieces of my life long before anyone talked about moving. That evening, Daniel called. His voice sounded exhausted. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Benjamin told me where he was today." "So you know about the storage unit?" A long silence followed. "I didn't know it existed." "I believe you." Those 3 words surprised both of us. After everything that had happened, I still believed my son hadn't known. He sighed deeply. "I just picked Sophia up. Is she all right?" "She's confused." "What did she find?" Daniel hesitated. "She said there were boxes with your name." "I know. There were also things from our house." "Our house?" "Lauren told me she'd rented the unit to store staging furniture for her business. And there wasn't any staging furniture. Instead, there were family belongings, mine, theirs, everyone's." "What else did Sophia see?" Daniel's voice cracked. "She found Grandpa's old fishing tackle." I closed my eyes. Miguel's fishing gear. He treasured it. Every spring, he and Daniel had gone fishing together at Alum Creek Lake. When Sophia turned 8, Miguel bought her a tiny fishing rod with a bright blue handle. She had insisted on carrying it herself, even though it was almost as tall as she was. The memory still made me smile, until now. Daniel continued. "She asked why Grandpa's things were hidden." "What did you tell her?" I didn't know what to say. Neither did I. The next morning, Benjamin arrived just after 9. This time he wasn't carrying only his briefcase. He also held a medium-sized cardboard box. "I brought something." "What is it?" "Items we recovered yesterday." He carried the box into my living room and carefully placed it on the coffee table. Inside were several familiar objects: Miguel's military portrait, the silver serving tray, my mother's embroidered table runner, the crystal candle holders. I gently picked up the portrait. My fingers traced the edge of the frame. "I thought I'd lost this." Benjamin smiled softly. "So did I." Tears blurred my vision. "I can't thank you enough." "You can." "How? Promise me you'll stop apologizing for protecting yourself." His words stayed with me. For months I had apologized for wanting to stay in my own home, apologized for keeping memories, apologized for saying no. Maybe Benjamin was right. Maybe I had forgotten that protecting my own life wasn't selfish. We spent the next 2 hours opening recovered boxes. Benjamin made careful notes. I identified every item: dining room, living room, garage, guest bedroom. Nearly everything had been cataloged, except one wooden keepsake box. The same small box Lauren had reached for the day someone called my name from the porch. Benjamin looked up. "This isn't listed." "No. It was never taken." "I still can't open it." He studied the brass lock. "Miguel mentioned this once." "He did. He told me there was something inside that should remain untouched until the proper time." "What is the proper time?" Benjamin smiled faintly. "He never said." That sounded exactly like Miguel, always leaving little mysteries behind. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I expected Evelyn. Instead, Sophia stood on my porch. She wore her school backpack even though school had ended an hour earlier. Her eyes were red from crying. "Grandma!" I opened my arms. She ran into them without saying another word. I held her tightly. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Benjamin quietly stepped into the kitchen to give us privacy. Finally, Sophia whispered, "I'm sorry." I stroked her hair. "For what?" "My mom." The words broke my heart. "Oh, sweetheart, this isn't your fault." She pulled back slightly. I heard them arguing. "When?" "Lots of times." "What did you hear?" She looked toward the kitchen to make sure no one else was listening. "Mom kept saying the house would fix everything." I stayed silent. "Dad always asked if you agreed." "And?" "Mom said," Sophia swallowed hard, "she said you were too lonely to know what was best anymore." My chest tightened. Those words hurt more than any eye roll ever could. Sophia continued, "I told Mom that wasn't true." What did she say? She told me children shouldn't interfere with adult decisions. I brushed away a tear from Sophia's cheek. You were very brave. She shook her head. No, I was scared. Benjamin returned carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He smiled gently at Sophia. I believe we've met before. Sophia nodded. You came to Grandpa's funeral. I did. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry I cried in your storage place. Benjamin chuckled softly. That wasn't my storage place. I know. I mean, she hesitated. The place with Grandma's things. Benjamin sat across from her. Sophia, yes? Can I ask you something? She nodded. When was the first time your mother rented that storage unit? Sophia frowned thoughtfully. I think it was before Grandpa died. Benjamin and I exchanged a quick glance. Before, are you sure? She nodded again. I remember because Grandpa drove us there once. What happened? He asked Mom why she needed such a big storage room. And Sophia's voice became almost a whisper. They argued. What about, I couldn't hear everything. But Grandpa said, she closed her eyes trying to remember, not while I'm alive. The room fell completely silent. Benjamin slowly removed a small notebook from his pocket and wrote down every word. Miguel had known, maybe not every detail, but enough to argue about it, enough to establish the trust, enough to appoint Benjamin. He had seen a danger the rest of us never recognized. Late that afternoon, Daniel arrived. He looked exhausted. Dark circles framed his eyes. When he saw Sophia sitting beside me, relief crossed his face. There you are. She stood slowly. I'm staying with Grandma for dinner. Daniel nodded. That's fine. He looked at me. Can we talk? I led him onto the back porch where Miguel and I had shared thousands of cups of coffee. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel said, I moved out. I stared at him. What? I left. Where are you staying? With a friend from work. I could hear the pain in his voice. I needed time to think, I nodded quietly. What have you decided? He looked across the backyard at Miguel's neglected garden. I've decided, his eyes filled with tears, that somewhere along the way I stopped being the son Dad raised. Before I could answer, Benjamin stepped onto the porch. He held a large manila envelope. I apologize for interrupting. What is it? I asked. Benjamin looked directly at Daniel. My investigator finished reviewing Tyler Morgan's email records. Daniel frowned. You have those legally obtained. Benjamin slowly opened the envelope. I'm afraid we've discovered exactly when your house was first promised to potential buyers. He pulled out the first printed email. The date at the top made my heart stop. It had been sent 2 weeks before Miguel died. The date printed at the top of the email blurred before my eyes. 2 weeks before Miguel died. I read it again. The date hadn't changed. Neither had the ache spreading through my chest. Benjamin laid the page carefully on the patio table between Daniel and me. No one reached for it immediately. The evening breeze rustled the maple trees in the backyard, carrying with it the familiar scent of freshly cut grass. It was the same peaceful backyard where Miguel had taught Daniel to throw a baseball, where Sophia had hunted Easter eggs every spring, where birthdays and anniversaries had been celebrated for decades. Now it had become the place where our family was unraveling. Daniel finally picked up the email. His hands trembled. The subject line read, Preliminary Property Review, Hernandez Residence. His lips parted. No, Benjamin remained calm. Please continue reading. Daniel's eyes moved slowly across the page. It says, he swallowed hard, the homeowner may be relocating within the coming months. Please prepare a confidential valuation and discuss potential marketing strategies. He looked up at Benjamin. This doesn't make sense. It wasn't sent by your father. I know that. Benjamin pointed toward the signature block at the bottom. Tyler Morgan. Daniel frowned. Tyler wrote this. Yes. But read who received it. Daniel looked again. His face turned completely white. The recipient wasn't Lauren. It was another real estate consultant. The sender was Tyler. But the line directly above his signature read, Per Lauren Hernandez's request. Daniel whispered, No. Benjamin slid over another document. This is Tyler Morgan's response to that consultant. Daniel continued reading. The owner is elderly. Family believes relocation is likely after anticipated life changes. Prepare discreetly. He lowered the paper as though it had suddenly become too heavy to hold. They were planning, his voice broke. They were planning this before Dad even, he couldn't finish the sentence, neither could I. I felt sick, not because the house had been discussed, because someone had already been imagining life after Miguel while he was still alive. Benjamin spoke gently. We cannot conclude exactly what everyone knew, but we can establish a timeline. Daniel shook his head repeatedly. I never knew. I believe you. I swear to you, Mom. He looked directly at me. I thought Tyler didn't become involved until after the funeral. I studied my son's face. For months I had questioned every word he spoke. Now, for the first time in a long while, I saw something that couldn't be faked. Shame. Real shame. I believe you, I repeated quietly. Tears immediately filled his eyes. Benjamin opened another folder. There is additional evidence. Daniel looked exhausted. How much more is there? I'm afraid quite a bit. He removed several printed text messages. The investigator recovered these from Tyler Morgan's business records. Benjamin handed them to Daniel first. One message read, Lauren. Don't mention listing paperwork yet. Daniel still thinks we're only getting estimates. Another Tyler understood. We'll wait until everything is packed. A third, Lauren. Once Abigail leaves voluntarily, everything becomes easier. Daniel stared at the pages without moving. His breathing became uneven. I never saw these. Benjamin nodded. I know. Daniel looked toward the backyard, unable to meet my eyes. She lied to both of us. Benjamin corrected him gently. She appears to have told each of you different versions of the same plan. Daniel closed his eyes. I kept defending her. I answered quietly. Yes. I kept asking you to trust us. Yes. I asked you to leave your own home. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He already understood. A soft knock interrupted the heavy silence. Sophia stepped onto the porch carrying a tray with 3 glasses of iced tea. I thought you might be thirsty. Her voice was timid. Daniel quickly wiped his eyes before turning toward his daughter. Thanks, sweetheart. She set the glasses down carefully. Then her eyes drifted toward the papers scattered across the table. Are those about Grandma's house? Benjamin answered kindly. Yes. She nodded slowly. I figured. No one spoke. Finally, she looked at her father. Dad? Yes. You didn't know either, did you? Daniel's eyes filled it again. No, I really didn't. She walked around the table and wrapped her arms around him. For a long moment, father and daughter simply held each other. Watching them, I suddenly remembered another afternoon nearly 20 years earlier. Daniel had been 23. He'd made a terrible investment with his first real paycheck and lost almost everything. He'd been terrified to tell Miguel. When he finally confessed, Miguel hadn't yelled. He hadn't criticized him. Instead, he'd placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder and said, a mistake doesn't define a man. What he does after discovering it that does. I wondered what Miguel would say now. Perhaps exactly the same thing. Benjamin waited respectfully until Sophia returned inside. Then he spoke again. There is one last issue we need to address today. Daniel sighed deeply. I'm almost afraid to ask. The missing property. Daniel frowned. What about it? We've recovered approximately 70%. Only 70. Benjamin nodded. The remaining items were never found in the storage unit. My stomach tightened. What items? He consulted his inventory. Miguel's antique watch collection. The handcrafted jewelry box. Several original deeds. And, he looked at me, the wooden keepsake box. I immediately looked toward the dining room. No, it never left the cabinet. Benjamin's expression changed. Are you certain? I saw it there. When I searched my memory, the day you first came. Benjamin stood. Let's verify. The 4 of us walked quietly into the dining room. The oak cabinet stood exactly where it always had. I opened the lower compartment. Empty. I frowned. No. I searched the upper shelves. Nothing. Every drawer. Nothing. The keepsake box was gone. It was here. I know it was. Benjamin examined the cabinet carefully. There are fresh scrape marks. What does that mean? Something heavy was removed recently. Daniel looked horrified. I haven't been in this room since... He stopped speaking. Then his eyes widened. Yesterday. What? I stopped by after work. You did... Lauren asked me to pick up 2 family photo albums she said Mom wanted. I stared at him. I never asked for anything. He slowly turned pale. I left her here alone for about 15 minutes. No one needed to finish the thought. Benjamin quietly closed the cabinet. I believe the keepsake box disappeared yesterday. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Oh my God. Just then, Daniel's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His expression immediately hardened. It's Lauren. Answer it, Benjamin said. Daniel hesitated. Then he pressed speakerphone. Hello? Lauren's voice sounded hurried. "Where are you?" "Mom's house. I need you to come home." "Why?" "I just got a call from Tyler." Benjamin and I exchanged a quick glance. Daniel asked carefully, "What did Tyler want?" There was a long pause. Then Lauren whispered the words that confirmed our worst fears. "He says someone broke into the storage unit." Benjamin didn't react. He simply reached into his briefcase and calmly removed a receipt. Across the top were the words, "Property released to trustee Benjamin Carter, signed 9:42 a.m." He looked at Daniel and quietly said, "I don't think your wife realizes that there was never any break-in." Daniel stared at the receipt in Benjamin's hand, then back at his phone. Lauren was still waiting on the other end. "Daniel," she asked, "are you there?" He swallowed hard. "Yes." "What exactly did Tyler say?" he asked carefully. "He said someone got into the storage unit this morning." Benjamin shook his head almost imperceptibly. Daniel continued, "Did Tyler actually see any damage?" There was a brief pause. I don't know." "Did he tell you the lock had been broken?" "No." "Then how does he know someone broke in?" Silence. It lasted only a few seconds, but it spoke louder than any answer. Finally, Lauren said, "I'll explain everything when you get home." Benjamin quietly folded the receipt and slipped it back into his briefcase. "I don't think that's necessary," Daniel replied. "What?" "I'm staying here." Another silence. Then Lauren's voice became noticeably sharper. "What do you mean you're staying there?" "I mean exactly what I said." "Daniel, don't do this." "I should have done it a long time ago." She lowered her voice. "You're choosing them over me." Daniel closed his eyes. "No, I'm choosing the truth." The line went dead. Lauren had hung up. None of us spoke immediately. Daniel slowly lowered the phone onto the dining room table. "I never thought we'd get here." I looked at my son. Neither did I. Benjamin waited until everyone had settled back into the living room before opening his briefcase once more. "I think it's time we discuss what happens next." Daniel nodded wearily. "I'm listening." "The trust gives Mrs. Hernandez complete authority over her residence." "I understand that now." "It also requires me to recover any property removed without her informed consent." Daniel looked toward the recovered family heirlooms. "So the missing items, we'll continue searching." "And Lauren." Benjamin chose his words carefully. "My responsibility is protecting your mother's interests. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to restore what belongs to her." I appreciated the distinction. For days I'd imagined dramatic courtroom confrontations and angry accusations. Benjamin approached everything differently. He focused on facts, on documents, on restoring order, not revenge. That afternoon, Daniel volunteered to help me unpack the remaining boxes. For the first hour, we worked almost entirely in silence. He carefully unwrapped each plate before handing it to me. I returned every piece of china to the cabinet where Miguel had always kept it, one by one. Slowly, respectfully. After several minutes, Daniel stopped holding a serving bowl. "I remember this." "So do I. Dad always used it on Christmas." I smiled faintly. "He insisted mashed potatoes tasted better in that bowl." Daniel laughed softly through tired eyes. "I used to think he was serious." "He was." We both smiled. It was the first genuine smile we'd shared in months. Then Daniel's expression became thoughtful. "Mom, yes, I owe you an explanation." I carefully placed another plate onto the shelf. "I'm listening." "I really believed moving you would make life easier." "I know, but that wasn't the whole truth." I turned toward him. "What do you mean?" He leaned against the kitchen counter. "After Dad died, I couldn't stand seeing you alone." I stayed quiet. Every time I drove away from this house, I worried. Worried about what? That something would happen. You'd fall. You'd get sick. You'd need help. I convinced myself you couldn't stay here forever. He looked down at his hands. Lauren kept saying the same thing. "Your mom needs us to make hard decisions. She'll thank us later. She just doesn't realize it yet." He shook his head. I repeated those words so many times that eventually I stopped asking whether they were true. I walked over and gently touched his arm. "Fear makes people believe strange things," he nodded. "But fear isn't an excuse." "No, it isn't." Late that evening, Sophia helped me organize old photo albums. She sat cross-legged on the living room rug while I remained in Miguel's recliner. Every few minutes, she laughed at an old family picture. "Grandpa had so much hair." I laughed. "Believe it or not, he complained every time I wanted him to get it cut." She turned another page. "Grandma." "Yes." "Can I ask you something?" Always. Were you ever angry at Grandpa? The question surprised me. Of course. What did you do? I told him. And then we talked. Sometimes we argued, but we always listened. She nodded thoughtfully. My mom and dad stopped listening. Her words were painfully simple. Children often see the truth more clearly than adults. I reached over and squeezed her hand. They can still learn. I hope so. So do I. The following morning, Benjamin called just after 8. I've received additional information. Good or bad? A little of both. What happened? We located Tyler Morgan. My pulse quickened. Did he cooperate? More than I expected. What does that mean? He resigned. Resigned. Effective immediately. I blinked in surprise. Why? Benjamin sighed. I believe he finally realized how serious this situation had become. Did he admit anything? He admitted Lauren instructed him not to discuss certain matters in Daniel's presence. I closed my eyes. Daniel had truly been kept in the dark. Benjamin continued. He also provided copies of every email invoice and appointment related to your property. Everything. I sat down slowly. Thank goodness. However, there was always a however. One important document is still missing. The keepsake box. No. The document your husband referred to repeatedly. What document? Benjamin's voice became very quiet. He called it his final family instruction. I've never heard those words. Neither had I until I reviewed his private notes. I frowned. What is it? I don't know. He never showed it to me. But according to his notes, Benjamin paused. He placed it inside the wooden keepsake box. I immediately understood. The missing box wasn't valuable because of the wood. It was valuable because of what it contained. Around noon, the front doorbell rang. Evelyn stood outside carrying another basket of homemade muffins. I baked too many. I smiled. I don't believe that for a second. She laughed. You caught me. As she stepped inside, she noticed Daniel helping me polish the dining table. Her eyebrows lifted. Well, this is nice to see. Daniel smiled awkwardly. I'm trying. Evelyn nodded approvingly. Keep trying. Then her expression grew more serious. I actually came to tell you something. What is it? I saw Lauren. My heart tightened. We're outside the storage facility. When, about an hour ago, Benjamin had already recovered the contents. Why would Lauren return? Evelyn continued. She wasn't alone. Who was with her? I couldn't tell. They were standing beside a silver sedan. What were they doing? They looked, she searched for the right word, desperate. Daniel immediately reached for his car keys. I'm going. Benjamin's voice came through my phone at that exact moment, almost as though he had anticipated it. Mrs. Hernandez. Yes, I need Daniel to stay exactly where he is. I put him on speaker. Daniel frowned. Why? Benjamin answered calmly. Because Lauren just contacted my office. Everyone froze. What did she want? Daniel asked. Benjamin's reply surprised all of us. She says she's willing to return the keepsake box. He paused, but only if she can speak to your mother alone. The room fell silent after Benjamin's words. Lauren wanted to meet me alone. For weeks she had avoided honest conversations, hidden documents, dismissed my concerns, and quietly arranged the sale of my home behind my back. Now she wanted privacy. Daniel immediately shook his head. No, you are not meeting her alone. Benjamin remained calm. That decision belongs to your mother. All eyes turned toward me. I took a slow breath. For months, everyone had been making decisions for me. Perhaps this was the first real decision that truly belonged to me. I'll meet her. Daniel looked alarmed. Mom, but not without conditions. Benjamin nodded approvingly. What conditions? You'll be nearby. I will. And the meeting will take place somewhere public. Benjamin smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd say that. The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon at a small botanical garden on the east side of Columbus. Miguel and I had visited it every spring. It felt like neutral ground. Benjamin arrived first. He chose a bench overlooking a small pond filled with lily pads. I'll remain out of sight, he explained. If you need me, I'll be less than 30 yards away. Daniel wanted to come. I gently refused. This conversation has to happen between Lauren and me. He reluctantly agreed. I'll keep my phone with me. I know you will. Lauren arrived 10 minutes late. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had walked through my house carrying a clipboard only weeks earlier. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. Her neatly styled hair had been pulled back hastily. Even her expensive blazer seemed wrinkled. She stopped a few feet away. "Thank you for coming." I nodded politely. "You wanted to talk." For several moments she simply stared at the pond. Finally she spoke. "I'm sorry." I remained quiet. "I know those words probably don't mean much anymore. They don't answer my questions." She lowered her head. "I know." She reached into her handbag. For one brief second my heart jumped. Was she holding the keepsake box? Instead she pulled out a thick envelope. "I brought copies." "Copies of what?" "The emails. The contracts. The notes." I frowned. "You already know about those." "Not all of them." She slowly handed me the envelope. "I kept records." "Why? I don't even know anymore." I looked inside. There were dozens of printed emails, calendar appointments, handwritten notes, loan statements. One yellow legal pad caught my attention. Across the top, Lauren had written, "House sale timeline." My stomach tightened. The list began nearly 18 months earlier, long before Miguel passed away, long before anyone mentioned downsizing. I looked back at her. "You planned this for 18 months?" Tears immediately filled her eyes. "No. I planned to survive." She finally told me everything. 3 years earlier, her real estate business had begun collapsing. At first, she believed the slowdown would be temporary. She borrowed money to keep her office open. Then she borrowed more to pay the first loans. When interest rates increased, everything spiraled. Credit cards, business loans, private lenders. Every month she convinced herself one more sale would solve everything. Instead, the debt doubled, then tripled. She hid every statement from Daniel. He believed the business was recovering. It wasn't. "Why didn't you tell him?" "I was ashamed." I listened without interrupting. "I thought if I could just sell enough houses—" She laughed bitterly. "I'd never have to admit I failed." "So you decided to sell mine?" She closed her eyes. "Not at first." "What changed?" "One afternoon, Tyler mentioned your neighborhood. He said houses there were selling quickly. I knew how much yours was worth." She looked directly at me. "And I let myself imagine that if you moved somewhere smaller, everyone's problems would disappear." I shook my head slowly. "You weren't solving problems. You were creating new ones." "I know." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine remorse. Not fear of legal consequences. Not embarrassment. Remorse. "I never hated you," Lauren whispered. "I know. I admired you. That surprised me. You and Miguel built something stable. You trusted each other. You never seemed afraid." She wiped away another tear. "I spent years pretending I had everything under control. But every month I was drowning," I answered quietly. "You should have asked for help." "I couldn't." "Why?" "Because I wanted everyone to believe I was successful." Her voice broke completely. "And when people believe you're successful, they stop asking whether you're hurting." She reached into her handbag again. This time she carefully removed the small wooden keepsake box. My breath caught. "There it is." She placed it gently on the bench between us. "I never opened it." "You didn't?" She shook her head. "I tried, but I couldn't find the key." I stared at the worn wood. Miguel's fingerprints had probably rested on that same lid hundreds of times. Lauren pushed it toward me. "It belongs to you." I looked at her. "Why return it now?" "Because—" She hesitated. "Sophia. My daughter looked at me yesterday. She wasn't angry. She was disappointed." Lauren covered her face with both hands. "I could survive people hating me. I couldn't survive my daughter no longer respecting me." Benjamin quietly approached once he saw the keepsake box on the bench. He didn't interrupt immediately. Instead, he waited until Lauren noticed him. She gave a small nod. "I assumed he'd be nearby." He was. Benjamin sat beside me. "Mrs. Hernandez." He examined the box carefully. "The seal is intact." "So she told the truth." Lauren looked at him. "I didn't open it." "I believe you." Those words seemed to relieve her more than I expected. Benjamin reached into his jacket pocket. He produced a tiny brass key. I stared. "You had it." He smiled. "No. Your husband gave it to me that day he signed the trust. He instructed me never to use it unless you asked." "You've had it all this time." "I have." He gently placed the key into my hand. "It belongs to you now." My fingers trembled as I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. A soft click echoed between us. I slowly lifted the lid. Inside were only 3 things: Miguel's wedding ring, a folded handwritten letter, and a sealed envelope labeled Final family instructions. No jewelry, no cash, no secret fortune. Only the things that mattered most to Miguel: family, love, trust. I picked up the handwritten letter first. Before unfolding it, I looked at Lauren. She was quietly crying. "I don't know what happens next," she whispered. I answered honestly. "Neither do I. But I know one thing." "What?" "I won't spend the rest of my life carrying bitterness." She looked surprised. "I've already lost my husband." "I'm not willing to lose my peace, too." Lauren broke down completely. "I'm so sorry." This time, I believed she meant it. Benjamin stood. "I think today's meeting has accomplished everything it needed to." I looked down at Miguel's letter resting in my hands. For months, I had searched for answers inside legal papers. Now, the answer I had needed all along had been waiting inside one simple envelope addressed to me. I didn't open Miguel's handwritten letter at the botanical garden. For a moment, I wanted nothing more than to unfold the paper and hear his voice again through the words he had left behind. But something inside me whispered to wait. Some things deserve the quiet of home. Benjamin seemed to understand without my saying a word. "You don't have to read it now," he said gently. "I know. When you're ready." I carefully placed both the handwritten letter and the sealed envelope labeled Final Family Instructions back inside the keepsake box. Then I locked it once more. This time I slipped the tiny brass key into my own pocket. Not because I feared someone would steal it again. Because for the first time in many months I was reclaiming responsibility for my own life. Daniel was waiting on my front porch when Benjamin drove me home. He stood the moment he saw me step out of the car. "Are you okay?" I smiled softly. "I think I finally will be." His eyes immediately fell to the keepsake box in my hands. "You got it back?" "Yes." He let out a breath he had probably been holding for days. "I'm glad." Benjamin walked over before leaving. "I'll prepare the final legal paperwork this week." "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "The trust remains exactly as your father intended." Benjamin looked toward me. "Mrs. Hernandez remains the sole decision-maker regarding every aspect of this property." I nodded. "That's exactly how it should be." Benjamin smiled. "I couldn't agree more." Before getting into his car, he turned back toward us. "One more thing." Daniel looked up. "Your father asked me to tell you something if this day ever came." Daniel's face tightened. "What was it?" Benjamin answered without hesitation. He said, "If my son ever loses his way, remind him that the door home is never locked, but he must choose to walk through it himself." Daniel lowered his head. Tears quietly rolled down his cheeks. "I don't know if I deserve that." Benjamin's expression softened. "Your father believed redemption had to remain possible." Then he drove away. That evening, Daniel stayed for dinner. Not because either of us planned it, it simply happened. For weeks, our conversations had revolved around lawyers, documents, debts, and betrayals. Now we cooked together. He peeled potatoes, I seasoned chicken, Sophia set the table. The kitchen slowly began to feel like home again. Halfway through dinner, Sophia looked around the table. "It feels different." "It does?" I asked. She nodded. "No one's pretending." Daniel looked at his daughter. "You notice that I notice lots of things." We all laughed quietly. Children really do. After dinner, Daniel helped wash the dishes. When the last plate had been dried, he leaned against the sink. "Mom." "Yes." "I talked to Lauren." I stopped drying a glass. "How is she?" "She's staying with her sister." I nodded. "She asked me not to give up on her." I waited. "What did you say?" I told her I couldn't answer that yet. I appreciated his honesty. He wasn't rushing toward forgiveness, nor toward revenge. He was allowing himself time. Sometimes that was the wisest choice. The next morning, I finally carried the keepsake box into Miguel's study. Very little had changed since the day he died. His reading glasses still rested beside a worn leather notebook. His favorite fountain pen remained exactly where he'd left it. The room still smelled faintly of cedar wood and old books. I sat in his chair. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating tiny dust particles floating peacefully through the air. I unlocked the box. This time my hands were steady. I lifted out the handwritten letter. Across the front in Miguel's familiar script were only 3 words. "My dearest Abby." I unfolded it carefully. "My dearest Abby, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer sitting beside you complaining that you've made the coffee too strong." A tear escaped before I reached the second sentence. Even now, Miguel managed to make me smile. "First, I need you to know something. You were the greatest blessing of my life. Not because you were perfect, but because every ordinary day became extraordinary simply by sharing it with you." I paused, pressing the paper gently against my chest. 43 years together. Yet somehow he still found new ways to tell me he loved me. I continued reading. I know you'll be tempted to let everyone else make decisions for you after I'm gone. Please don't. You've spent your entire life taking care of other people. Now it's time to trust yourself. Another tear slipped down my cheek. He knew me so well, too well. If someone pressures you, pause. If someone rushes you, wait. If someone tells you they know what's best for you, politely smile. Then make your own decision. I laughed softly through my tears. That sounded exactly like Miguel. Firm, gentle, practical. Near the end of the letter, his handwriting became slightly shakier. Please don't let anger become your final memory of our family. People make terrible decisions when they're frightened. Some deserve consequences. All deserve the chance to become better than their worst mistake. I stopped reading. Those words echoed inside me. Lauren had done terrible things. Daniel had failed to protect me. Yet Miguel wasn't asking me to ignore the truth. He was asking me not to let bitterness become the ending. That distinction mattered greatly. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the box. The second envelope remained unopened. Final family instructions. Benjamin had suggested waiting until I finished Miguel's personal letter. Now I understood why. One had healed my heart. The other would likely shape the future. Before opening it, someone knocked gently at my front door. I slipped the envelope back into the keepsake box and walked downstairs. Lauren stood on the porch. She looked nervous. More nervous than I'd ever seen her. I know you probably don't want to see me, I answered honestly. I wasn't expecting you. She nodded. I won't stay long. She held out a small photo album. I found this. I accepted it. It was one of our oldest family albums. The cover was faded from years of use. I thought it had been lost. So did I. She hesitated. I've been returning things all morning. To who? Everyone. I frowned. What do you mean? I've spent the last 2 days giving back everything that never should have left. She looked exhausted. I don't expect forgiveness. Her voice broke. I need Sophia to see me doing the right thing even if it's too late. I looked into her eyes. For the first time since all of this began, I no longer saw arrogance, only regret, real regret. I hope, I said quietly, that you continue doing the right thing. Not because of me. Because that's the example your daughter deserves. Lauren nodded through tears. I will. As she turned to leave, she stopped. Oh, there's one more thing. What is it? She looked back at me. I found another envelope hidden underneath the false bottom of the keepsake box. My heart skipped. What? I didn't realize it was there until this morning. She carefully removed a small, sealed envelope from her purse. Across the front, in Miguel's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "To be read by the entire family together." For a long moment, neither Lauren nor I moved. The small sealed envelope rested in her outstretched hand. Across the front, Miguel's handwriting was unmistakable, "To be read by the entire family together." I looked from the envelope to Lauren. You didn't open it. She shook her head immediately. No. I thought about it. She gave a sad smile. But after everything I've done, I knew it wasn't mine to open. I accepted the envelope carefully. It felt surprisingly light. Yet somehow it carried more weight than every legal document Benjamin had shown me. I'll call everyone, I said quietly. Lauren nodded. If you'll let me come. I studied her face. A few weeks earlier, I would have refused without hesitation. Now, after Miguel's letter, I found myself asking a different question. Not whether she deserved another chance, whether our family deserved the opportunity to hear his final words together. Come tomorrow afternoon, I finally said. She exhaled slowly. Thank you. Before leaving, she hesitated once more. I sold my car. I blinked. What? The luxury SUV? I used the money to begin paying back my lenders. I remained silent. I've also withdrawn the house listing paperwork. Benjamin had already suspended everything legally. Still, hearing her say she was undoing her own decisions mattered. I hope that's the beginning, I said. So do I. She quietly walked back to her car and drove away. That evening I called Benjamin. When I told him about the envelope, he remained silent for several seconds. I wondered whether he'd left something else. You knew? I suspected. Miguel was meticulous. If he labeled something for the entire family, Benjamin chuckled softly. Then he intended exactly that. I'd like you to be there. I'd be honored. Next I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Mom, I need you and Sophia here tomorrow. Is everything okay? I think so. What's happening? I found another letter from your father. Silence. Then almost in a whisper, I'll be there. The following afternoon, the house slowly filled with familiar faces. Benjamin arrived first. As always, he carried his weathered leather briefcase. But this time he placed it quietly beside the front door. No paperwork today, he said with a gentle smile. Just family. Daniel arrived with Sophia 15 minutes later. Sophia immediately hugged me. Hi, Grandma. Hello, sweetheart. Daniel looked nervous. I haven't slept much. I didn't expect you would. Finally, Lauren arrived. She paused outside the front door as though uncertain whether she should come inside. Daniel looked at her, then at me. I nodded once. Come in. She entered quietly. No one spoke for several moments. The same living room that had once been filled with moving boxes now looked almost exactly as Miguel had left it. The china cabinet was full again. Family photographs had returned to their proper places. The military portrait hung proudly above the fireplace. The house finally felt like home. I placed the keepsakes box on the coffee table. Beside it lay the unopened envelope. Benjamin looked around the room. I believe Miguel would have liked seeing all of you here. Sophia smiled faintly. I wish Grandpa was here. So do I whispered. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single folded letter. I unfolded it slowly. The room became completely silent. Then I began reading aloud. To my family. If this letter is being read, then I have already said goodbye to this world. If you're all sitting together, then one miracle has already happened. You're still a family. Daniel quietly lowered his head. I continued. Abby, you have carried our family with grace for more than 40 years. Thank you for every sacrifice no one ever noticed. Tears blurred my vision again. I paused only long enough to wipe them away. Then I continued. Daniel, being a good son has never meant making perfect decisions. It has always meant having the courage to admit when you've made the wrong ones. Daniel quietly covered his face. Sophia reached over and held his hand. I kept reading. Lauren. She immediately looked up. I could hear her breathing quicken. If life has frightened you enough to believe money can replace peace, then I hope one day you discover that peace is worth far more. I have never doubted your intelligence. I only worried that fear might one day become stronger than your judgment. Lauren began crying silently. No one interrupted. Then came the part addressed to Sophia. Sweetheart, if you're old enough to understand these words, then you're old enough to remember something important. Adults sometimes disappoint us, love them anyway, but never copy their mistakes. Sophia wiped her eyes. I miss him. So do we, Daniel whispered. Finally, I reached the last section. There is one final request. Everyone looked at me. Please do not spend the years I no longer have arguing over the things I left behind. The house was never my greatest gift. The dishes were never my greatest gift. The money was never my greatest gift. You were. I could barely continue. If my home ever becomes a place where love cannot survive, sell it. But if forgiveness still lives inside these walls, then keep filling it with family dinners, birthdays, laughter, and ordinary Tuesdays. That is how I hope you'll remember me. The letter ended simply. Take care of one another. Love always, Miguel. No one spoke for a very long time. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was healing. Finally, Daniel stood. He walked across the room toward Lauren. She looked up uncertainly. I'm still hurt, he admitted. I know. I don't know what our future looks like. I understand. But, he took a slow breath. I'm willing to go to counseling. Lauren covered her mouth. You are for Sophia. And because Dad would have expected me to fight for my family before walking away from it. Fresh tears rolled down Lauren's cheeks. I'll do whatever it takes. I know you will. They didn't hug. Not yet. Some wounds needed more time. But for the first time they were facing the same direction instead of standing on opposite sides. Benjamin quietly smiled. I think your husband just accomplished one final piece of legal work. I laughed softly through my tears. What do you mean? He reminded everyone what actually matters. Before everyone left, we shared coffee and pie in the dining room. Miguel's favorite serving bowl sat in the center of the table. Sophia laughed while telling stories about school. Daniel helped refill coffee cups. Lauren quietly collected empty plates without anyone asking her to. No one mentioned lawsuits, no one mentioned debts, no one mentioned the house. For one peaceful afternoon, we were simply a family again. As the evening sun settled behind the maple trees outside, I looked around the room and realized something. Benjamin had been right. The greatest part of Miguel's legacy had never been written inside a trust. It had always been written inside the people he loved, and perhaps just perhaps, that legacy still had a chance to survive. 3 months passed more quickly than I expected. For the first time since Miguel's death, I stopped measuring time by what I had lost. Instead, I began measuring it by what was slowly being rebuilt. Every Tuesday morning, I still drank my coffee on the back porch. The chair beside me remained empty. I doubted it would ever stop feeling empty. But the silence no longer frightened me. Sometimes grief doesn't disappear. It simply learns to sit beside hope. The garden Miguel loved became my first project. I couldn't manage everything by myself, so one Saturday Daniel arrived carrying work gloves and a shovel. "I figured the tomatoes need somebody to keep the roses company," he said with a nervous smile. I laughed. "Your father would approve." For hours we worked side by side without rushing. We pulled weeds, replanted flowers, built new wooden supports for the tomato vines. Every so often Daniel would stop and tell another story about Miguel. Stories I had heard dozens of times somehow felt new again. When we finished, he stood quietly looking over the garden. "I spent so much time trying to prepare you to leave this house," he said. "I never realized this house was still preparing me to become a better son." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your father always believed people could grow." I hope he was right. He was, because I was watching it happen. Daniel and Lauren began attending marriage counseling. They didn't magically solve every problem. Real life rarely works that way. Some conversations remained painful. Some memories still hurt. Trust once broken returned slowly, not through promises, through consistency. Lauren found a full-time administrative position with a local nonprofit organization. The salary was smaller than she had once earned in real estate. Oddly enough, she seemed happier. One afternoon she sat with me on the front porch while Sophia helped plant flowers nearby. "I spent years chasing success," she admitted. "I thought expensive things proved I'd made it. And now," she smiled softly, "now I sleep through the night." She had sold nearly everything that symbolized the life she had tried so desperately to protect. The luxury SUV was gone. The designer office had closed. Most importantly, every outstanding loan was being repaid through a structured repayment plan negotiated with her lenders. Benjamin had recommended an excellent financial advisor who specialized in debt recovery rather than bankruptcy. "It'll take years," Lauren said. "I know, but at least every payment is honest." I nodded. "That's how lasting peace usually begins." Benjamin continued visiting every few weeks. Eventually, all of Miguel's estate matters were formally completed. One sunny afternoon, he placed the final folder on my dining room table. "Mrs. Hernandez, I believe this concludes my responsibilities as trustee." I looked down at the neatly organized documents. "So that's it?" He smiled warmly. "Legally." "But not personally," I laughed. "You'll always have a place at this table." "I was hoping you'd say that." Before leaving, Benjamin handed me one last envelope. "What is this?" "A copy of every letter your husband ever left in my care." I looked at him in surprise. "He trusted you that much?" Benjamin's eyes grew moist. "No, he trusted you. I was simply fortunate enough to witness it." As he walked toward the front door, he paused beside Miguel's military portrait. "I've practiced law for nearly 40 years, he said. "I've handled estates worth hundreds of millions of dollars." He looked back at me. "But I've rarely seen anyone leave behind a richer inheritance." After he left, I understood exactly what he meant. Miguel hadn't left wealth, he had left wisdom. Sophia became my regular Saturday visitor. Sometimes we baked cookies. Sometimes we worked in the garden. Sometimes we simply sat together reading books. One afternoon she asked a question that made me smile. "Grandma, yes, if Grandpa could see us now, what do you think he'd say?" I pretended to think very seriously. "He'd probably complain that someone forgot to water the tomatoes." She laughed so hard she nearly dropped her lemonade. Then she became thoughtful. "I think he'd be proud." "I think so too." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a school essay. "My teacher asked us to write about our hero." I smiled. "Who did you choose?" She handed me the paper. The title read, "My family taught me that doing the right thing is sometimes hard." Not one person's name, our family. She had understood Miguel's greatest lesson. As autumn arrived, the maple trees lining our street turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson. On a cool October evening, I hosted dinner for the entire family, not because it was a holiday, not because someone had a birthday, simply because it was Tuesday. Miguel always believed ordinary Tuesdays deserved celebrating too. The dining room table was full once again. The china Lauren had once packed without permission held roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. The crystal candle holders reflected warm light across smiling faces. Sophia told us about making the honor roll. Daniel teased her about becoming smarter than he was. Lauren laughed a genuine, relaxed laugh I hadn't heard in years. At one point, everyone started talking at once. The room became wonderfully noisy. I looked around the table and suddenly realized something. This house no longer echoed with grief, it echoed with life. I quietly excused myself and stepped onto the back porch. The evening air was cool. The wind chimes Miguel had hung years earlier danced gently in the breeze. I closed my eyes. "I hope you can hear us," I whispered. The chimes answered with their familiar melody. For the first time since losing him, I didn't feel alone. I felt accompanied, not by ghosts, by memories strong enough to keep love alive. Months ago, when Lauren rolled her eyes as she packed my dishes, I thought I was watching my family fall apart. In many ways I was. But I was also witnessing something I couldn't yet understand. The truth has a strange way of arriving at exactly the moment we think everything is lost. Benjamin's unexpected knock on my door didn't just save my house, it saved my voice. It reminded me that kindness should never require surrendering our judgment, that love should never demand silence, that growing older does not mean giving away the right to make our own decisions. Miguel protected me with legal documents because he understood something profound. The greatest gift we can leave the people we love isn't money or property. It's the courage to think for themselves, the wisdom to admit mistakes, and the grace to forgive without forgetting. I still miss my husband every single day. I suspect I always will. But now when I walk through our home, I no longer see only what ended. I see what continues. Family dinners, shared laughter, second chances, ordinary Tuesdays. And every time I hear the wind chimes outside my porch, I remember the promise I quietly made the day I read Miguel's final letter. As long as this house stands, it will never again be a place where fear makes the decisions. It will always be a place where love does. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment when someone tried to make an important decision for you? And how did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy heartfelt family stories filled with suspense, emotional twists, and meaningful endings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next journey. Your support truly means more than you know.